This is Shamal Thomas, and welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So I wanted to follow up on a story I did yesterday, I believe, dealing with Donald Trump trying to foment some kind of conflict with Iran. So Donald Trump and his administration came out and applied sanctions to Iran for what they allege as Iran firing a missile test. Now, and just so they can make their own case for this, Donald Trump says they don't appreciate how kind President Obama was to them. Not me. So the sanction announced Friday targeted a dozen companies and 13 individuals, including Chinese firms suspected of supplying parts used in Iran's missile development program. The measures were invoked in response to January's missile test by Iran and the country's support for Houthi rebels in Yemen. The Trump administration will no longer tolerate Iran's provocation that threaten our interests, Trump's national security advisor Michael Flynn said in a statement. The days of turning a blind eye to Iran's hostile and belligerent actions toward the United States and the world community are over. So that's what they're using as a justification to add these sanctions. So to give it a little more context, there is an element in the White House that has a Twitter account called Rogue White House. Now, there's several organizations that sprung up within like the EPA and some of the forestry, environmental sections of government that call themselves rogue elements. In this case, Rogue White House put out several tweets talking about this very thing, the sanctions. The only reason people pay attention to Rogue White House is because the prior information that was released turned out to be correct, and there was information that nobody else knew about. So Rogue White House put out a statement, several statements saying, this is looking a little disconcerting, that for the most part these guys are talking about sanctions, and that talk is getting dangerous because they're trying to come up with a pretense or pretext for the Trump administration to be able to attack Iran. They're looking for a reason. This is a typical playbook of politicians, particularly right-wingers, meaning they would create a crisis, and because they know it's a playbook of politicians in general, if I'm being honest. You want to get past a piece of legislation that is ghastly. A piece of legislation that you know will not be supported by the public, but you yourself want to get that legislation through. The playbook has been to create a crisis. And in that crisis situation, you go to the people and say, hey, I don't want to do this. This is not something I'd like to do. But we're in an extraordinary moment. And because we're in that extraordinary moment, we have to do this particular ghastly thing that you guys don't like, but I personally love. So think over the years. So you have voter ID, where they're like, we need to find a way to suppress the vote, because when Republicans suppress the vote, they have a better chance of winning. So how can we suppress the vote and get people to go along with it? I know, voter ID laws. So you could say, hey, there's a massive amount of voter fraud, which is the crisis. The solution being voter ID. Now, voter ID is not a solution to what they're claiming is the issue, meaning voter IDs don't help that particular type of voter fraud. But again, it had nothing to do with voter fraud. Voter IDs provides exactly what they're looking for because it suppresses the vote. And hell, it excluded like 100,000 people, or hundreds of thousands of people throughout the course of the United States in these past elections. You can even go to Russia. When Russia invaded the Ukraine, and Russia said something like, oh, we needed to protect our Russian speakers. That's all we're trying to do is, we don't want to invade the Ukraine. We don't want to get involved in this. We're just trying to protect our speakers. Now, the actual point of invading Ukraine was that Russia did not want NATO on its border. It's that simple. So for them, entering militarily into Ukraine was a far better option than allowing NATO to expand that close. The crisis, oh my God, there's a civil war. The resolution, oh, we have to invade. It keeps Ukraine from going to the United States or from going to the NATO. Weapons of mass destruction, Saddam Hussein, same thing. They have weapons of mass destruction. We need to go into Iraq. There are no weapons of mass destruction. This strategy is used over and over and over and over again to gin up support for things that under normal circumstances would not have that support. So in this situation, this sounds a lot to me like the exact same thing. Iran is being belligerent. Iran is attacking our shit. Iran is doing XYZ. They're not living up to the agreements. it sounds like Rogue Whitehouse is right. It sounds like they're looking for a pretext to attack Iran. Real News Network did a story on what took place within regards to the Trump administration and the sanctions. Let's hear about it.
Welcome to the Real News Network. I'm Paul Jay. On Thursday morning, Press Secretary Spicer said this.
I think General Flynn was really clear yesterday that Iran has violated the joint resolution, that Iran's additional hostile actions that it took against our Navy vessel are ones that we are very clear are not going to sit by and take. I think that we will have further updates for you on those additional actions, but clearly we wanted to make sure that Iran understood that they are on notice. This is not going unresponded to.
Not only was it not an American ship, in fact it was a Saudi ship, and it wasn't the Iranians, it was the Houthis, in fact, if this even took place. But clearly it was not an Iranian attack on an American ship. Now joining us this.
Spencer got up there and lied through his teeth. That man lies more as a press secretary than I've ever seen. It's amazing how he just gets up there and just spouts this stuff off. But the point to that was, A, it wasn't an Iranian missile, or it wasn't Iran. B, it was not an American ship. And C, he's using words like hostile actions, and we're putting them on notice. So the idea being, well, the next time we claim that they did something, now we have pretense to attack, because we warned them, we told them, we were trying to help. We did everything we could to prevent a crisis or a military issue with Iran. They're doing the opposite of trying to prevent a crisis with Iran, and they're lying through their teeth in the process of doing it. If they were not trying to foment a war, there would be no reason to lie this flagrantly. So let's take it another step. So part of the reason why they keep saying Iran and Yemen is because they're trying to conflate the two. They're trying to make this case that Iran is a backer of Yemen, or supplies weapons and materials and all this other stuff to Yemen. And so they're thinking that Yemen is a proxy for Iran. This story came out in the Washington Post. No, Yemen's Houthis actually aren't Iranian puppets. They're making the case that says, look, yeah, there is some coordination where Iran may give them small arms or something. But Iran does not have influence in the way that the United States and some of the Western powers are making it out to be. So in the story itself, so they said on March 15th, when a coalition of 10 states led by Saudi Arabia launched a campaign of airstrikes against Houthi Saleh coalition, Riyadh's declared objectives are to roll back the Houthis and reinstate Hadi. Saudi Arabia claims that the Houthis are Iranian proxy, leading it to frame the war as an effort to counter Iran's influence. The Saudis are not the only ones to label the Houthis puppets of Iran. Politicians and media in the West, particularly, also frequently describe them as Iranian proxies. So do you see how the words are being conflated? So Trump comes out, or Spicer comes out and says, they attacked our ship. Well, they didn't attack your ship. It wasn't even Iran. But because they're looking at, or they're using this Orwellian speak like, oh, that's an Iranian proxy, so it may as well be Iran. Again, all of this sounds like a pretext, like the run-up to Iraq. This looks pretty ghastly. The article essentially makes this point that, yeah, even though Iran gave them a little something, that the reason they're in coordination with one another has more to do with both having the same or similar interests. They don't necessarily like the way that region of the world is being governed, meaning Israel and America having hegemonic power in that region of the world. So Iran's support for Yemen is essentially run along those lines. But the article also makes the point that it doesn't mean that they're proxies. Yemen has the capacity to function on their own without Iran, and it is a legitimate question to how much influence Iran has on Yemen. So let's fast forward. Actually, not even fast forwarding. Let's go back a little bit. So a while ago, General Wesley Clark explained a situation where the neocons had come up with an idea to attack multiple Muslim countries to reorganize that section of the world. Let's hear him.
Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who used to work for me, and one of the generals called me in. He said, "Sir, you gotta come in. You gotta come in and talk to me a second." I said, "We were too busy." He said, "No." He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk and picked up a piece of paper. He said, "I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today." And he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran."
The video quality was bad, but I hope you all heard that. Essentially, these guys had came up with an idea to literally knock over one government after another in the Middle East. And for the most part, this is what they've been doing, even under the Obama administration. Now, granted, we've been trying to undermine Syria, we've been bombed Libya to obliteration, destroyed Iraq. And now Trump is trying to foment resistance or foment some pretense for war with Iran. And in using that pretense for war with Iran, they're using rhetoric that's Orwellian in the way that they're trying to present this information. Just to summarize, because I know this is kind of right much information, but A, Trump administration comes out saying, we're doing sanctions on Iran because Iran attacked our vessel, and Iran is now being belligerent and aggressive. 2, it was not Iran who attacked their vessel. It was actually Yemen, or the Houthis in Yemen. 3, it was not a U.S. vessel. It was a Saudi vessel. And Saudis have been murdering Yemenis in large swaths. They've killed thousands. I mean, to be honest, many of those guys should be held up for war crimes for some of the stuff they've been doing. 4, they're using, or they're conflating those terms together because they want to be able to present this argument of, we have justification to attack Iran because of this, this, and this. All of that justification, for the most part, are lies or spinning of the truth. But again, in situations where you're trying to provoke a crisis because you want to implement a solution that you want, that people would usually not go along for, it had nothing to do with reality. It has everything to do with creating an argument to accomplish what you're trying to do. And in this case, the Trump administration is trying to kill a lot of people and essentially trying to have another Iraq. Wesley Clark, in that particular speech, makes this point like, look, they're trying to take over one country after another. So when I hear talk about fomenting resentment against Iran and trying to come up with a pretense to attack Iran, I take it as being legit. Because up to this point, all of this stuff has, look, it's not a smoking gun, but at the very least, it's a hell of a lot of proof or a hell of a lot of evidence that leads me to believe that, yeah, they are trying something. So, look, it behooves us to keep an eye on what the Trump administration is trying to do on this front. And to not let these guys get away with doing another Iraq and murdering another upwards of 1 million people. You gotta stop them. because this is absolutely foul and despicable. Thanks, guys.